Right now, live at 5, the vote counting continues in a few battleground states as the razor-thin race to 270 electoral votes narrows.
More details on Wisconsin's election results.
How you can cope with election anxiety.
And hundreds of protesters are arrested in the Twin Cities after protests over the election. Plus, for the third straight day, Minnesota has reported a record number of new COVID cases.
You're watching Live at 5 on Live Local CBS 3.
Welcome to the CBS 3 News Live at 5. Here's a live look from the Government Center in Superior, where we're learning the state has broken its record for all-time voter turnout. We'll have more on that story, plus the most up-to-date election news coming up in this half hour of Live at 5. Good evening, I'm Kristen Bakke.
And I'm Anthony Matt. Thanks for joining us. The race for the White House hinges on just a handful of states where the ballot counting continues.
Michael George is in Willington, Delaware with more.
The vote count between former Vice President Joe Biden and President Trump in several uncalled states continues to narrow.
This is going to be an extremely close margin, especially in the presidential election.
In Georgia, the president holds the lead, while Biden leads in the western states of Arizona and Nevada.
We want to make sure that we're being accurate. The results in the state of Nevada obviously are going to be very important to the entire country, and that is our #1 goal.
The Biden campaign says the vote count is only looking better and better for them. Meanwhile, on Twitter, President Trump demanded election officials stop the count and made allegations of voter fraud, which were flagged as misleading by Twitter. The Trump campaign has filed multiple legal challenges across several states, with the latest in Nevada.
We firmly believe that there are many voters in this group of mail-in people that are not proper voters.
We are not aware of any improper ballots that are being processed.
President Trump is celebrating a ruling in Pennsylvania, which allowed Trump campaign officials to observe the vote count.
We're not leaving till we witness every single vote that transpires in here.
But the Trump campaign's litigation strategy also hit setbacks Thursday. A Georgia court dismissed a lawsuit over absentee ballots. And in Michigan, a judge denied the Trump campaign's request to halt ballot counting.
Both the Biden and Trump campaigns have mounted huge fundraising efforts online to help pay for legal challenges as the 2020 election count continues.
Well, early numbers show Wisconsin has broken records when it comes to voter turnout this election season. CBS 3's Emma Quinn is in Superior with the details.
Well, the Wisconsin Election Commission hasn't released those final results as the canvassing process is still underway. They did release some preliminary numbers today, and 3.2 million people in Wisconsin voted in this presidential election. This smashes the previous record in 2012 when 3 million people casted their vote. Now, Wisconsin has more than 4 million people who are old enough to vote. This means 72% of all eligible voters casted a ballot this year. That number also comes close to a record. In 2004, Wisconsin saw 73% of eligible voters take part in the election. As far as absentee ballots this year, almost 2 million of those were casted. Wisconsin saw roughly 10,000 people apply for same-day voter registration. The Election Commission officials applauded those who came out to make their voices heard in this election, and they also acknowledged that voters were safe and respectful of the process.
But for the peaceful and civil way that they did so. And I'm also proud of our local election officials and our poll workers. They followed the law. They were incredibly professional despite enormous pressure.
And again, these numbers are all preliminary as the canvassing process is still underway. Now, despite the Trump campaign of claiming that they filed a request to recount the ballots here in Wisconsin, Election Commission officials say they have not received that request. In fact, the Trump campaign actually cannot put that request in until the canvassing process is complete, and which could, again, take a couple more weeks. But they say they are prepared should that happen.
All right, thanks, Emma. And meanwhile, the city of Duluth also saw massive turnout this election. According to city reps, slightly more than 80% of registered voters cast a ballot. That's almost 50,000 people. They say some precincts saw more than 90% voter turnout.
As vote counters work around the clock, so too are protesters. Demonstrations are underway near the White House and in cities all across the country. Deborah Alfarone reports.
Freedom! Freedom!
President Trump's supporters are back outside Detroit's ballot processing location, following last night's protest where they chanted, "Stop the count." They've also gathered in Washington, D.C. and in downtown Phoenix.
I just want to see a fair election. You know, I want every legal vote to be counted.
Without citing evidence, Trump supporters say they believe what the president has told them, that there were major problems with voting and ballot counting.
We're not trying to break in. We just like to watch you count the ballots.
Last night, outside a Phoenix area vote processing center, Trump supporters demanded more access to watch vote counting, even though observers from both parties were inside and the procedure was live streamed. Sheriff's deputies in tactical gear guarded the location after a far-right group walked in and complained ballots marked with Sharpies were being tossed out. Election officials said Sharpie pens don't disqualify ballots. Supporters of former Vice President Joe Biden are demonstrating too, including outside of the Philadelphia vote counting center and outside the White House. This group says they're pro-Joe Biden and also anti-President Trump. They say they'll stay here at Black Lives Matter Plaza until every vote is counted.
President's alluded to maybe throwing out mail-in ballots or absentee ballots, and I'm here today to just make it clear that I don't think that should happen.
Election officials across the country have repeatedly said vote counting is continuing as expected, and there have been no reports of fraud.
Closer to home, hundreds of demonstrators were arrested last night after marching onto an interstate in Minneapolis. Law enforcement officers arrested at least 646 people protesting President Trump's threats to challenge the result of Tuesday's unsettled election. They were also protesting a variety of social injustices. Officers in riot gear surrounded the crowd. Officials say no force or chemicals were used. A section of Interstate 94 was closed while officers arrested the demonstrators one by one.
A Minnesota judge says he won't move the trial of 4 Minneapolis police officers charged in George Floyd's death. The judge also ruled that all 4 officers involved would be tried together. The Hennepin County judge made that ruling after defense attorneys argued that pretrial publicity had made it impossible for the 4 men to get a fair trial. The judge argued moving the trial away from Minneapolis to less diverse areas of the state likely would have affected the makeup of the jury.
Hundreds of workers at the Keewatin Taconite mine will soon be headed back to work after months of being laid off. According to Dan Pierce, Keetack's union president, the company said it plans to begin recalling union members back to work as soon as tonight. In a statement, U.S. Steel officials said they are encouraged by the increase in demand for their products and believe restarting Keetack will help better support customers. The company expects to fill around 400 positions as part of the restart. Keetack originally shut down in May due to impacts on demand amid the pandemic. And Dave's here for a first look at the weather now. Dave, a little cooler today than we're used to over the last couple, but ultimately still an unseasonably warm day.
Yeah, still about 20 degrees warmer than normal, but most high temps were hovering around the 60-degree mark, with a couple of folks as cool as the mid-50s. There's a look at the high temps, at least so far, and 51 is what we hit in International Falls, made it to 57 in Hibbing, almost 60 at the airport in Duluth, but Superior cracked 61. So did Solon Springs and Ashland, and Waters meet our top temp here at 65 degrees. Tomorrow we go back towards 70, although I do think the warm spell is going to start to wane once we get through the weekend. Sunshine should have us for Friday, but then once we get into Saturday, clouds will start to build up, and our next rain chance could be with us by Sunday. We'll talk more about the extended forecast in a few more minutes, but right now we'll show you the day planner for Friday, which says it's another clear to partly cloudy day with a high temp near 65 in the Twin Ports, could be into the 70s away from the lake. We'll show you what towns those are going to be and how hard we're going to crash come Tuesday when it cools back down again in just a few more minutes, like I mentioned.
Thanks, Dave. Still to come on Live at 5, a new royal couple has been chosen at Chisholm High School, plus a popular area band has released a new album. City by City is coming up next.
And tonight at 6, we're taking a closer look at election numbers in Michigan, and we'll hear the governor's message following the election.
You're watching Live at 5 with Kristen Vaki, Anthony Matt, and weather with meteorologist Dave Anderson on Live Local CBS 3.
Going to be a much nicer, more spring-like forecast after today.
Yeah, I really hope, it actually happens.
I hope so too.
All right, thank you, Austin. Well, to give you a better idea of those road conditions right now after this late spring snowstorm, we're going live now with CBS 3's Jenna Lake. Jenna, good morning. How is it looking out there right now?
Hey, Leanne. So we wanted to take a little bit of a look at what the side roads look like, and I don't have very good news for you here. So let's take a look. This road, we are on Faribault Street, just off of Woodland, and it has not been plowed, so we're just relying on other people's car tracks. But this is a very slushy mix here that we've got going on, and people's tracks coming together. It's turning into ice. This is not an ideal situation. Definitely take it slow. And what we've noticed too, you might have to dig yourself out. We've seen plenty of people out here trying to get their cars out and shoveling themselves out of the driveway, making their own tracks before they venture out onto them. So that's something that you're going to have to plan for as well if you live on a side street, even if you live on a main street. We were on Arrowhead Road for a while, and that did not look ideal. It looked a lot like this, in fact. We're just turning onto, I'm not sure what this side street is, but I'll let you know as soon as I see a sign. We're slipping around a little bit here, you can see, with all this slush. So this is Maxwell Avenue, and it looks, honestly, this is a side street, but it looks very similar to what Arrowhead looks like right now at this time as well. So what I want you to get from this report here is that you're going to need to take a lot more time to get to where you're going this morning, especially if it involves going up or down the hill. If you're going down the hill, note that things will get better once you get closer to the lake. But if you are up on top of the hill, as you can see here, Leanne, we've got a lot of snow, and it's still snowing. Visibility isn't great, and so I don't anticipate things to improve very much in the next hour or so. But nonetheless, we will keep you
Welcome to Eye on Money, our news segment where frugal finance comes first. And well, we all try our best with our finances, but nobody is perfect. In fact, the average American makes 91 financial fails each year. Local financial professional Barry Bigelow is back from the Great Waters Financial and joins us this morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks again, Leanne.
Just to talk about all things with money. So what is a financial fail? Explain that to me.
Yeah, overspending, not addressing your debt. People do it in a lot of different ways, and usually it has to do with money that you don't have or money that you shouldn't spend. It's usually an emotional decision. And to take the emotion out of it, you need to have a plan. And so there's 4 areas that we really want to focus on. You got to recognize the problem and then have a plan to address it. And so those 4 areas are failing to save. So the stats and estimates will show 69% of working Americans are not putting money towards their retirement accounts. That's a huge problem, because if that little sacrifice that doesn't happen on the front side means you're going to be dependent on that job for later in life income to pay your bills. And so I would recommend putting away 10 to 15% each paycheck as a starting spot to where you can actually put that money away and have it for a future retirement. There's a great calculator on my website at greatwatersfinancial.com that can show you what a little saving today does for your future.
Okay, and I feel like that's like, you know, a long-term goal that you want to be on track, but you know, you should also be on track for short-term and saving it for like a rainy day fund as well.
Correct, yeah. And so the next one is, failure to have a plan. Saving 10 to 15% is a good start. However, the way we deal with planning and we put together a financial plan for someone is we start with where they want to go, and we work our way backwards to see what's possible. And you can't sacrifice the now. Obviously, you still have to pay your rent and your mortgage and all of those things for the future. But oftentimes people, spending the $5 on coffee every day and all of those things are the ways that we fail instead of saving for the future. And so that, the third one would be failing to address your debt. And so it gets very easy to swipe that plastic card, or now we insert them all the time, right?
Yeah.
And just, I'll pay it later, I'll pay it later, I'll pay it later. And again, stats show a full third of people over 73 years old think they'll never be rid of debt. That's a horrible way to go through life. And when I talk to people who are going into retirement, they don't want to have debt. And so having a plan to address that debt, what I would recommend is using what's called the debt snowball, which means you order your debt from smallest to greatest, pay off the smallest one first, use that payment to pay off the next smallest one, and so on and so forth. And when you do that, the debt disappears very quickly over time.
Yeah, I know one of our producer, Chance, he is actually doing that right now, the snowball effect, and that's worked really great for him.
It's very effective, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the last one is failing to get educated. Education and knowledge is power. There's workshops in Duluth that are free to attend every single month. I have one tomorrow night at Northland Country Club. Come out. I find it's interesting. People don't know the difference between a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k, a 403b, and all of that alphabet soup. And knowing is the deal. So you got to know before you can plan. And so come out, get educated, find out what is in your future, because there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I'll be the first to say, I feel like a lot of millennials as well, and, you know, people around my age, we don't know what that stuff is, because it's just, you know, it's retirement. What is that? That's far away. We have to work for 50 more years, you know, so that's just not in my mind.
Sometimes it feels like that,
yeah.
But if you have a plan, you might not have to work as long as you think.
Exactly. That's what I want. I want to have my yacht one day and drink margaritas and coast. All right, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
The oldest forms of hunting has been seeing a surge in popularity in recent years. Bow hunting is on the rise in the Northland. According to the Wisconsin DNR website, archery tag sales went up 13,000 between 2015 and 2017. This comes as rifle permit sales trended downward by almost the exact same figure. CBS 3's Chance Fortune spoke with a local archery dealer to find out what's fueling this increase.
Randy Graber owns Custom Archery in Superior. He says they've seen a big increase in business ahead of this year's archery season.
This year is booming. Ever since about the 1st of June, we've been non-stop. It's the craziest year I've ever seen.
It's a trend Graber says is also reflected in local archery events like Bowfest, which draw hunters and enthusiasts from across the nation to Superior each year for a 4-day archery competition.
Bowfest has been a great event. It's been nothing but grow. They get more and more people every year. That I think you're drawing some of that crowd that maybe didn't bow hunt.
According to Graber, Bowfest isn't the only big contributor to bow hunting's rising popularity in the region.
Like all the new YouTube channels out there, and there's a lot of guys just out having fun filming their hunts, and I think a lot of people are seeing that and seeing what kind of the other side of what comes to hunting besides just going out and shooting stuff.
David Jones is a Duluth hunter who's using social media to spread bow hunting to others. He says what's drawing more hunters to the archery world is the challenge that it presents.
In Northland, I'm beginning to see more and more bow hunters because it's becoming that, you know, that popular sport. More hunters are, you know, they're wanting a challenge.
Jones runs his own Instagram hunting channel. He says he enjoys using his platform to showcase just how fun bow hunting can be.
What I love is just getting messages where I have inspired someone, or, you know, they were watching somebody else on YouTube or Instagram and they say, hey, you know what? I love watching you go out and go hunting. You know what? It looks extremely fun. I see how much fun you're having. I want to go out and I want to have that same experience too.